Good morning. I'm on a little bit early today. I need to go and get an MRI done on my right knee, so I need to be in town early. Isaac and Eric, as I was mistaken yesterday, they are father and son. Surgery went well, and both of them were doing okay. The last I saw last night, but as I mentioned yesterday, they will be in the hospital for quite some time yet. So with recovery, making sure everything goes well. Today is December 7th. And I hope that it's a day that our school systems make sure that our children know about. And I remember in school, in history and world history that, we seldom got as far as the Second World War. We would, get to the First World War, but, we really didn't kind of get into that part of some of the history, although we knew what December 7th was all about with the attack on Pearl Harbor. But our histories seem to be getting forgotten or invalidated in some ways in so many different things. And this is part of what was going on in the church, in the early church. And as we look at 2 John today, this letter was written because there were people that came to be known as Gnostics or Diocists, and these Docetists, they were a group of people that were, some of the false prophets, and they were teaching that, Jesus really didn't come in the flesh. He wasn't really flesh and blood. He was God, but he had the appearance that he had flesh and blood, but he really didn't have flesh and blood. He didn't really suffer and die on the cross. He didn't bleed because it was all just an appearance, because he was God. None of this could happen. And, he didn't understand pain and all that. And so this 2 John was written, excuse me, it says to the elect lady and her children, it starts out. And so we don't know if that means a particular woman and her family or if it means a church in a specific community. But the people, some of these false prophets were, they were kind of preaching Jesus, but a different Jesus. A Jesus who, even though he was on earth for this extended time period, he didn't really live through any of it. It was just all show. And it got to be, it was a problem for many years, with the Docetists and the Gnostics, and 2 John was written, probably around 70, 75, 80 AD, who knows for sure. But this Gnosticism and Docetists and stuff, they were around and really big and strong for many years, even into the 2nd and 3rd century. And we still have people today that would, kind of claim the same thing. So anyway, it's written to encourage these people to believe the truth. And the word truth is used, 4 or 5 times right off the bat here, and, he says, the people who I love in truth, but also who have known the truth, because the truth which abides with us. And it's God the Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the Father, in truth and in love. And it just, so often it begs the question, what is truth? And in today's society, truth is blurred, and there's a lot of times that there's the gray areas. But John wanted these people to know that the truth of Jesus Christ is that he really lived, he really suffered, he really died, he really bled. There wasn't any false put on, there wasn't any just show. It was real, and that his suffering and death was real, and that Christ is the Son of God, and that God did raise him from the dead. This is the truth. And this is what John and the early gospel writers, the letter writers, were encouraging people then and now to believe. And so, the first 3 verses were the greeting and the talk of the truth and that reassurance. And then verse 4, I rejoiced greatly that I have found some of your children walking in truth as we received the commandment from the Father. So they're walking in the truth is believing in Jesus Christ and his suffering and his death and his resurrection. And he says, I wrote a new commandment to you, but that which we have had from the beginning, that we love one another. This is love, that we walk according to God's commandments and that we love one another. And this is an encouragement and to believe and to walk in the true love of Jesus Christ. And then the next paragraph talks about many deceivers have gone out into the world, and they are the Antichrist. They are working against God, and we need to be aware of them and alert and watching out because of them. And he says, look to yourselves that we do not lose the things that we worked for. And so we to be careful that we remember and we teach God and Jesus Christ properly. And then, he talks about sin. Whoever transgresses and does not abide in the doctrine of Christ does not have God. So the doctrine of Christ is he lived, he died, he suffered, he died, and God raised him from the dead. That's the doctrine of Christ. And these Docetists, the Gnostics, and others, it's not really real. It's kind of like the religious leaders wanting people to say, well, they stole him away. The disciples came and stole him away. Well, how did they steal him from a guarded tomb? It was some of these falsehoods that people were starting to believe because they said them often enough. And it's, the adage, a lie is a lie, even if it's professed to be truth, and the truth is the truth no matter what. But sometimes we begin to believe the lie. And it's just like I sometimes tell myself, well, I'll remember that. Sometimes, most of the time I do, but sometimes I don't, but it's, these people were starting to believe false things about Jesus, teaching false things about Jesus. Verse 10, John writes, if anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, do not receive him into your house, do not greet him, for he who greets him shares in the evil deeds. So if somebody comes to you preaching Jesus Christ, other than that Christ lived, suffered, died, and God raised him from the dead, do not welcome this person into your home, into your midst, into your church. This is not a person you want to listen to, John says. So be careful. Be careful as to what you hear. And especially, when you hear something that doesn't agree with what I have taught, John says. John was one of the respected leaders because he had been a disciple of Jesus. He spent time with him. He was there. He saw it. So John was one of the respected leaders that, when he could, would travel around to these different communities and different churches and teach, just as Paul did. And, Paul has with his missionary journeys, and John and the other disciples too, although some of them stayed pretty much in Jerusalem. But they went about spreading the word of Christ. And John said, if someone comes teaching other than this, do not welcome them. Do not encourage them. Do not listen to them. But remain firm in the truth of the doctrine of Christ. That he lived, born of the Virgin Mary. That he suffered under Pontius Pilate. That he died on the cross, and that God raised him on the third day. That's the doctrine of Christ. And that's what we need to believe. Have a very blessed day. And I'll see you tomorrow, more about the normal time of 9 o'clock.